The theory is we set goals in order to lead intentional and purposeful lives. But what if goal planning has the opposite effect and instead of being helpful actually causes anxiety and overwhelm? If you're a creative or spiritual person, you've perhaps discovered that the standard advice and approach doesn't work for you. And when that happens, the tendency is to blame ourselves rather than the process or advice. But we are not broken. We just need something different. In this video, I'm sharing my alternative approach to goal planning for alternative people, which looks and more importantly feels very different from mainstream productivity advice. Welcome Kindreds, it's Jessica. I'm a witchy and creative misfit who makes videos about spirituality, journaling and tools for creative self-discovery. If you're new here, welcome. If you've visited before, then welcome back. I appreciate your time, so let's start. You've probably heard that advice to work out what your goals should be by visualizing future you. What does your life look like? What work are you doing? Who do you interact with? The idea with these exercises is that we can visualize our ideal life, which helps us to move towards what we want. It's an attractive approach, literally, and it can be really useful in giving us a general direction, a vision for where we ultimately want to be in our lives. The problem is that the gap between this vision and where we are right now might feel more like a chasm than a playful jump over a stream. There can be so many things which need addressing that it's impossible to know where to start, which feels so overwhelming that we just don't start at all. This is why I prefer to goal plan from my pain points rather than the end vision. It's easier to move away from something which is causing a problem in my life right now, rather than towards a potential future which is somewhere way off over the horizon. To do this, I ask myself these two questions. What is causing the most pain in my life right now? And what can I do to change that? The answer to those questions reveals what I need to work on. It sounds really simple, and it is, but it does take a deep degree of honesty about how things currently are. It also requires that I know myself well enough to not be drawn to work on something because I should want to make improvements in that area, but instead identify when something genuinely feels wrong or off to me. I can do this most of the time now, but it still trips me up now and again. Sometimes even starting from pain points brings up too many things which need work, in which case it can be helpful to have a strategy to figure out where to focus first. Last year I made a video where I elaborated on those basic pain point questions to do a mid-year check-in. I decided to revisit that same exercise at the beginning-ish of this year to see how things have changed. In essence, it involves ranking the different areas of my life according to how satisfied I am with that part of my life. I find this a helpful way to look at my life as a whole. My aim is not to reach 10 out of 10 in all areas. I feel like that's an unhealthy amount of pressure to put on myself. It's more a snapshot of where I am at the moment and a springboard for where I want to go next. Typical productivity advice is based on a machine model which works on the assumption that we are always moving forward, always making progress. But humans are animals, not machines. We are part of nature, and nature moves in cycles and seasons, not in straight lines. We take steps forward in some facets of our lives, while other areas may fall apart completely from time to time. That is natural and not something we should be ashamed of. Mapping it out like this shows me where I am now and makes it easier to see where I want to focus my attention next. Before I go deeper into my areas of focus and start setting goals, I like to be aware of what I need to do to keep things ticking over in the areas I've decided not to focus on. You can skip this part if you like and go straight to the goal setting section. I'll put timestamps in the description. But this is something which is overlooked and I think is really important. Ideally, we don't want the good things in our life to fall apart because we're focusing on the bad things. Usually the good things are good because we are doing certain actions which keep them that way. Identifying these actions and giving ourselves kudos for them is really useful. It means we can safely leave these things bubbling away on the back burner while we focus on the areas which need change. Keep doing what works, change what doesn't work. If you feel overwhelmed with organising these other aspects of your life, I made a video about that which people are finding really helpful. It's called It's Not Too Late to Get Organised. I'll link it in the description and at the end of this video. It's a step-by-step system for getting a handle on things so that you can free some time and space to be able to think about goals and what you'd like to achieve. If you have severe anxiety around goal setting, then it'd be good to start there rather than setting yourself up for failure by forcing yourself to set goals when you just don't have the spoons for that at this moment. I find it's pretty easy to spit out those kind of standard goals like lose 10 pounds, read 50 books, learn to speak French. But I also find they are mostly meaningless unless there is a bigger why behind them. The main reason why goal setting is so hard is because there are so many things which could be fun or interesting or useful. It's not like there is a shortage of things we could do, but we are human and mortal, so we have limited time. What will you do with your one wild and precious life? And for me, that's when the anxiety kicks in. How am I supposed to choose when there is so many options? And this is the deeper reason why I think planning from pain points is a good approach. It means trusting ourselves, our emotions, our inner knowing to inform our next steps. I'm not saying that pain is the only thing we can rely on to guide us. If we have that inner knowing and deep trust in ourselves to know what is best for us, then we can lean into our emotional guidance in other ways too, like following joy or excitement. Emotions are looked down on in our supposedly rational and mechanistic world. We're taught to be suspicious of our inner guidance system. And this results in not being able to believe and trust ourselves, which then results in overwhelm and anxiety when we have to make important decisions bereft of our natural guidance. Pain isn't the only emotion we can trust, but it is sometimes the only one which we still take seriously. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments if you use your inner guidance when choosing goals and how you allow for that. To set meaningful goals, we need to figure out what is important to us personally, and that means working out why that thing is important and what it actually means. Two people might have the exact same goal, say getting fit, but their reasons for that goal and their understanding of what that goal means can be completely different. One person might want to run a marathon, another person might want to be able to take their kids to the park without feeling out of breath. We all start from where we are, and different things are going to excite and engage us. Finding those things, those reasons behind what we want, is key to setting meaningful goals that skirt that edge between challenge and overwhelm while staying on the challenge side of the line. Once I have an idea about the areas of my life I want to focus on, I do some mind mapping and journaling to figure out what I want to do and why I want to do it, and then how I can make those changes. So this year I've decided to focus on 3 life areas for my goals, but you can definitely just choose one. One is powerful. If you achieve it sooner than you thought, you can always set the next goal at that point. To work out my what and why, I just allow myself to jot everything down, big overarching statements about what I want and need without editing or worrying or even thinking too much, just pouring it all out. I'm not committing to anything at this mind mapping stage, just getting it out of my head and onto paper. I think of this as a form of journaling, but I don't do it in my journal. I like to use big sheets of paper where I can scroll away to my heart's content. Then I shove it somewhere and leave it to marinate for a while. When I'm ready, I get it back out and see if it still makes sense to me. Emotions change, and what might have seemed of utmost urgency last week may not be so today. Allowing this extra time gives me the best of both worlds. I can trust my emotions and also allow for those things which are more long-term issues to bubble to the top. I bring in other tools to kind of cross-reference my goals too. I use astrology, my tarot card of the year and my word of the year to help me decide if the goals I've identified are actually a good fit for me at this moment in time. At this point, I like to set it aside for a second marinating. Maybe I should have gone with a bread analogy instead, a second proving. Yeah, I like that better. Or you might be ready to get to the how part straight away. I go back to my paper and work out how I might go about addressing the things I wrote down. For example, one of my goals this year is to feel strong in my body. This was too vague, so I dug into it some more and revealed that what I actually want is a good level of functional fitness and strength where I can do normal day-to-day activities easily. And then the second part of that is to also enjoy exercising without feeling exhausted or daunted. So how could I go about this? So many ways. I could choose a program to work on and follow that. I could set reminders on my phone to do certain exercises at regular intervals. I could join a group of people all working on this type of goal. I could dig deeper into why I don't currently enjoy certain types of exercise and why it makes me tired. I just basically fling down all the possibilities I can think of, even if they seem far-fetched or unlikely that I'll actually do any of them. Sometimes when you do this, you might identify that your goals require factors outside of your control. Like I wrote that I want to feel like it's good and safe to be myself. But as a woman in patriarchy, then that goal is only going to be partially possible without huge cultural change. One how for this goal could be overthrowing patriarchy, but as that is unlikely this year or by myself, then I allow myself to adjust my goals to make them feel less daunting. I don't want to set myself up to fail. At this point, it can be helpful to address the elephant in the room if there is one. Is this a goal which you've worked on before but haven't achieved? What have you already tried? Why do you think it didn't work? I bet it's not because you're a horrible person with no motivation or follow through. More likely you didn't have the support you needed to achieve your goal, or you tried to do something which was just too much right now, or there's some baggage around that goal which needs unpacking. Try and stay kind with yourself throughout this process. Anything you've already tried is helpful information when you're thinking about how to approach your goal this time around. What I end up with after this round is a whole load of things which I could do. Some of them I really want to do, some are just meh, others are a definite no, and even if I just did the exciting ones, there is no way I would have enough time for them all. So at this point, I need to be really honest with myself about the usually lack of time I'll have to work on all this and trim things down even further. I prune hard at this stage. I find it better for my mental health if I achieve my goals earlier than I thought, rather than if I overplan and then feel like a failure. I can always add more things in later if I feel I have the space for that. If you're following along with these steps, then what you'll have now is a hopefully manageable set of actions which you can take to meet your personally meaningful goals. Honestly, I don't think it's necessary to get even more granular with personal goals, breaking them into quarters and months and assigning deadlines to each part, that kind of thing. But by all means do that if it works for you. I just find that kind of thing sucks the joy out of it for me. It makes it feel kind of boring and worky, and then I don't feel engaged. And ultimately I rebel by just not doing all the sensible steps I painstakingly planned out. At this stage, I just need to know if something is a one and done, like taking a course or painting the kitchen, or whether it's a habit. I find I can cope with more one and done things on my list because they have a definite endpoint. So once the thing is done, I can tick it off, and that feels so good. Habit-based goals are a lot more tricksy in my experience, and I recommend not taking on too many of these at a time. Personally, I find that 1 is the optimal number, though it's really hard to trim down this much. We tend to focus on the output of goals, something tangible that'll be obviously achieved or ticked off when it's done, and that's helpful in a lot of ways for getting excited about making a change. But I think it's also helpful to look at the input. What do you need in order to achieve this goal? Sometimes our goals are things which we can do entirely by ourselves, but most of the time there are at least some parts of our goal which would be easier if we have help. Perhaps you might want to work with a life coach or therapist, or even a financial advisor who can give you helpful insight into whether your goals are achievable and desirable. Which kind of input is right for you? You can decide. Some goals require actual physical resources to achieve. Like if you're planning on learning to sew, then you'll likely need a sewing machine or other tools. And this also represents a financial input. All goals need time input, and this can mean having to cut back on other activities and perhaps getting someone to help with your existing responsibilities so that you actually have the time to work on your goal. I find this stuff can be really triggering, so keeping it in mind, and ideally on paper too, at this stage helps to just be real about what your needs are if you're going to go for that goal. Be really honest. What input do you need to make it happen? What support do you need? According to Leonie Dawson, 80% of people don't think about setting goals. Of the 20% of people who do, which includes you if you're watching this video, only 5% write them down, and only 1% actually keep track of their goals and check in with their progress. These 1% are the highest achieving people. I'm not sure where she got this data from or what criteria she's using to define high achievement. Perhaps traditional capitalist success measures like earnings, which is problematic in itself. However, I have found that some kind of tracking or checking in is essential if you want to achieve a goal. And if you find setting goals causes anxiety, then you don't want to put yourself through this whole process and then not follow through with your plans. Treat yourself as important enough to follow through for, even if you don't believe you are at first. If you would do the thing for someone else, and if it's the right goal for you, then you can show up for yourself. Give yourself that sort of level of love and care. How you go about tracking or checking in with your goals is important too. The check-in process can feel like a work review, or it can feel like a nourishing, self-loving ritual. You get to learn more about yourself and your needs and wants. I know which one I'd choose. I keep my refined version of my goals in my journal to refer back to, and I like to plan what I'll work on and when with the seasons and cycles, taking it one moon cycle at a time. At each dark moon, I check in with what I've planned and see what's finished and what needs to be carried over, replanted in the dark of the next cycle. I share this process with my Moonwise Goddess channel members. You might like to do your check-ins weekly or monthly or quarterly. You might want to use tools like planners or habit trackers. There are lots of ways. I'll come back to this in another video. This one's already getting really long. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions or thoughts, please let me know in the comments. Warmest blessings, and I'll see you very soon.